This year in World Studies, you will not just be students. You're going to have the opportunity to become a teacher. So you'll need to learn how to present information in a way that's engaging, not boring, and visually exciting for your audience. One way you can do that is using Google Slides. Google Slides is kind of like Microsoft PowerPoint, but it has some unique advantages. First of all, like everything we use in Google, Slides is on the cloud, and that means you'll never lose your work, and you can access it from anywhere. Slides is a great tool to help you express information in a way that gets your audience excited, but it doesn't do all the work for you. So first, we're going to learn why would we use it, how are we going to use it, and what's the best way to utilize this piece of technology. First, let's talk about why Google Slides is very effective. We humans communicate a lot. It's kind of our thing. We've gotten really good about it. And communication is really just taking what's in your head and trying to put it into another person's head. And that's harder than it sounds. And that's because, whether you know it or not, very little of our communication as human beings is verbal. On average, students retain only about 70% of what they hear in the first 10 minutes of class. By the last 10 minutes, that drops to 20%. Overall, when you're just talking to students, they're attentive only about 40% of the time. There's a lot of things you can do as a teacher, and you will become a teacher in this class, to overcome this problem, to help your students, each other, learn. One thing that you can do is you can add visual aids. Visual aids can increase student learning from about 14% overall all the way to 38%. Did you see what I just did there? I'm using visual aids to teach you about visual aids. Man, I'm a great teacher. You've got to ask yourself this question. Who am I trying to reach? Well, you're trying to reach someone that's just like you, right? A middle schooler. You should know them pretty well. Here's how communication basically works with humans. We communicate only about 7% verbally. That's the words we say. 38% of what we communicate is vocal. That's the way we say things, the way we enunciate words, the words we choose to use, and how we emphasize different parts of speech to make sure that people are paying attention to it. Now, if you take a look at this graph, more than half of communication, 55% of communication, is visual. Think about how many visual cues you see every single day. Think about how you communicate with other people in a visual way, with hand gestures, with facial expressions, through your body language. Now think about a time that you were really bored in class. Might have been my class. I hope not, but it happens. It could be any class. Any time that you were so bored, you felt like you were gonna die. What was going on in that class? The chances are it looked something like this. The teacher's in front of the class talking and talking and talking, and then they talk some more, and then they talk. They don't integrate visual aids into their classroom. They don't give you something to look at to help your eyes see what they're trying to say. Because remember, how much of our learning is visual? More than half. If we just sit here and listen to someone talk, we're not really learning a whole lot. Here's a great example from that masterpiece of an American film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? A tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone, raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo economics.
As you learn how to become a teacher, remember, communication is active. You can't just stand up there and talk, and you can't just stand up there and read what's on your Google slide. It makes people fall asleep. Remember those 3 V's. Communication is verbal, vocal, and it's also visual. And because communication relies so much on visual aids, you've got to use them. Nobody likes to have a boring teacher, so try not to be a boring teacher. Because ultimately, bored people can't learn. That's a fact. That's science. You can't argue with science, man. Now, maybe you're sitting there and you're saying, wow, this is kind of ironic because I find Mr. Plotho incredibly boring. Well, that's fair. You know, my teaching style may not be for everyone, but I try. This teaching thing is hard. And that's another lesson. Like, you might not be amazing your first time. You might not be amazing your second time or third time or ever. It's important that you just keep on trying. Because, you know, sucking at something is the first step toward being sort of good at something. You know what I'm saying? All right, let's talk about the important stuff. How to use Google Slides. First, we're going to learn a couple rules. Specifically, one really important rule, and you've got to pay attention to this because I will hold you to this rule for every presentation you give in this class. So, pay attention. This is what I call the 4x4 rule. And it's really important that you follow this rule so you can make a good presentation. This means that you can only have 4 text blocks, and each text block can only have 4 words on every slide. Let me demonstrate that for you. This is a slide. That in the middle, that's a text block. So whenever you have a large or small block of text, you can consider that a text block. Now take a look at that. That's a lot more than 4 words. No one's going to read that. So instead, we're going to take all that text and we're going to break it down into main ideas. And each of those main ideas becomes its own text block. Each one of those text blocks is only 2, maybe 3 words long, so they're perfect. Okay, so what I've done here is I took one of those text blocks, those main ideas, and I created a brand new slide. And then, underneath that main idea, I gave supporting ideas. In this case, we could talk about the climate of Africa as being arid and hot, it has low rainfall, it has little to no snow, and it experiences a lot of drought. Each one of those is a text block. You'll notice here that I kind of bent my own rule. There are 5 text blocks here. But that's okay because I'm not dumping a wall of text onto my slide. I'm not overloading the audience. It's still main ideas. It's still supporting ideas that I can expand on in my presentation. You might have noticed that something was missing from our slide. Yeah, visual aids, because learning and communication is visual. So here I went out and I found a visual aid. Now this could have been anything, but for me, a visual aid should help. It should add to the story. It should support what you're trying to talk about. I started off with an image of Africa that was just kind of pretty, but it didn't say anything about the climate, and that could be just distracting. So instead of that, I went out and I found an image of Africa that deals with the climate regions of Africa. So you see what I have here is main text blocks with information about the climate that I can discuss with my students. Then I found a visual aid that I can reference when I'm talking about the climate regions of Africa. There's nothing on this page that is wasted. There's nothing that's there just to be pretty. Everything on this slide has a purpose, and that's the way it should be. All right, I want to go back to our first slide for a second for a really important note about using slides. And it seems like whenever I have any students, whether they be your age or my age or 50 years old or 1,000 years old, they always start off using it the same way, and I don't want you to get into that habit. And here's what they do. They get up there, and they have a wall of text. And then their presentation goes something like this. They turn their back to the audience, and they start talking. First of all, you're turned away from your audience. Remember how much of communication is visual, body language, facial expression? If they can't see your face, you're not communicating. You're just verbalizing. And that's only 7% of communication. You're being 7% effective. Don't waste your potential. Anyway, what happens is they get up there and they do this. Africa is a large continent. It has a very arid climate and it is very hot. There are many different types of animals and plants. There are many types of landscapes in Africa. I'm not teaching. There's nothing that is engaging about this lesson. My audience is staring at me and hoping they would die rather than have to sit through this for another minute. Don't be that teacher. Engage them. Use what I've taught you to become a better teacher. And along the way, you'll find something interesting. It's a lot more fun to be a good teacher than a boring teacher. Because you know what boring people are? They're bored. Have fun with this. You'll like it if you let yourself. Okay, now I'm going to show you the most basic functionality of Google Slides. But remember, the best way to learn how to use something like Google Slides or Google Drawing or literally anything else is to just get in there and get your hands dirty with it. So if it's going to help you to take a look at this tutorial and see some of the things that I can show you, continue on. But if you're one of those people that just is like, hey, Plotho, shut up, I want to play with this, turn the video off, man. There's nothing here for you. I'm going to show you some basic stuff. If that benefits you, good. And if it doesn't, don't waste your time. Carry on. Go play. So when you pull up a blank slides presentation, you're going to start with a title slide. Over on the right-hand side, you have some options. You can choose from pre-designed themes. It's all those down the side there. And then you can always import a theme. You can go to different websites or talk to different users or design your own theme, and you can import it here and use it. For now, we're going to stick with a blank screen. So that's what we're going to start with. Let's start with titling our presentation so we know we can come back to it to work on it later. We're going to call it Google Slides. If you right-click here, this one shows all of your individual slides. If you right-click here, it's going to give you some options. I want to show you first to apply a layout. It'll give you options for title slides, section headers, title and body. And this is where you can make a decision. You can either start from something that's pre-designed for you, something that's going to be pretty easy to use, doesn't take a whole lot of time, or you can go with blank and create it by scratch. I don't want to take that much time, so we're going to start with title. So the title of this one's going to be using Google Slides. Parents and students. So your title here should be pretty simple. It should tell your audience exactly what you're going to talk about. And it really shouldn't be too wordy. It should be very, very few words, about 3 or 4 words per line. Your subtitle down here can be a few more words. This one should be the header, it should be the headline, it should be the attention grabber. So right now we're using Arial font and 52 font size, and we have some options here. Let's go take a look at what we have. These are obviously, I guess, some of my more popular fonts that I use, but I've also added a whole bunch more. Over the years, I've added all of these individual fonts up here that I can choose from. But if I find one, I don't know, I don't want to use any of these. None of these work, so I'm going to go to more fonts. There are really hundreds, possibly thousands of different fonts you can choose from. You can scroll down until you find one that works, or you can go over here if you know a font style that you want. Let's just say Google.
Up now. Let's see, slide. Nothing. How about power? Oh, we're going for power. No, wow. Okay. Let's just go with one that's here then. Let's choose quicksand. When we choose quicksand and click OK, it's going to import that font style into our options up here, right up there at the top. And it's also going to apply it to the slides we chose. And then we can go down here and also apply it to that. And that could be your first slide. There's a lot we can do here. We can change the background. For example, we can say background, we want to have it be purple. I don't have an image to use, so we're not going to do that. And we'll say done. So purple and black, kind of hard to see. So maybe we'll mess around with our colors. Go up here to more. Looks giving me options for our color options up here. So let's stick with a theme, right? So this color here fits with the theme that we're working with. So we're going to choose that one. I'm going to bold it since it's our title. I'm also going to apply that same color over here to our subtitle. Looks a little bit better. It stands out a little bit more. This will give you us a really, really good title that will grab people's attention, and it looks a little bit better to look at.
You know, I'm actually going to stop right there because I want to give you a chance to, like I said, get your hands dirty with this awesome app. Go on in, play with it, tinker with it. You're going to find that there are a lot of similarities between Google Slides and Google Drawing. They have similar functionality. They have similar tools. You're going to find those shapes tools just like you saw in Google Drawing, and they work just the same way. So, take what you know and apply it to this new app. Here's the few things that you should take away from this tutorial. Remember the 3 V's. Communication is verbal, vocal, and visual. So take advantage of all of those different forms of communication to be the best, most effective teacher you can be. You're going to become a teacher in here. That's a part of the class. So you just kind of get used to the idea. Use the tools you have, skills that I can teach you to become a great teacher. You might not be a teacher when you get older, but I promise you, you will use these skills a lot, no matter what you do. Remember the 4x4 rule. It's a guideline, really. It's just there to make sure that you don't dump a wall of text onto a page. Try to limit yourself to 4 bullet points with 4 words each. And also, try to include visual aids, because remember, learning is visual. Before long, I'll be back with a much more advanced tutorial, and I'll show you some other things that you can do to make your presentation stand out. We'll talk about animations and including video and messing with color schemes and so much other stuff that, it's just, I want you to get started. I want you to start doing. Until that time, if you have any questions or if you'd like to discuss anything from this video, go ahead and shoot me an email to the address on your screen. I'll be happy to get back to you as soon as I possibly can, and I will have that more advanced tutorial available for you as soon as possible. Have a good one, guys. See you next time.